Hello everyone, this is Emily and I have some good news.
Who likes good news, everyone?
Today I'm bringing you a new project and it's Nakime-san from the anime Demon Slayer. Nakime-san only has one eye and there is no better doll for this project than Iris Klops from Monster High. As usual I start with removing her factory hair, but this time I feel bad for doing this because Iris has Canikalon hair, which is super soft, nice and smooth, and because unlike the most of the other Monster High dolls, she has absolutely no nasty glue in her head. After removing her hair, I removed her makeup with acetone and sprayed her scalp with 1 or 2 layers of Mr. Super Clear sealant before painting it black. I did this because vinyl might absorb the paint and it will spread like an ugly stain around the painted area too. For this particular project it's not that important because I'm gonna paint the face white as well and we won't be able to see the stain spread. However, I thought that this thing is important to mention, just in case. Nakime has very long hair at the back of her head and short hair at the front. I mark all of the splits with a pencil first and then I'm going to reroute her head with obsidian black nylon hair. First I reroute the back of her head with long hair and then the front of her head with slightly shorter hair, because I would need to cut them anyway. When I'm done with rerouting, I use all-purpose glue in her head to glue the hair from the inside. I've chosen this glue because it's waterproof and I plan to style her hair with a boil wash, which means just pouring a doll's head with boiling water. I was too lazy to carry my camera to the kitchen, so I'm just showing the end result, but if you need more information on this technique, you can search boil wash on YouTube. See, now her hair sits smoothly around her head. When I'm done with the hair, I cover it with plastic wrap, spray doll's face with MSC and paint it with a few layers of white acrylic paint. Oh, and I wouldn't want to risk boil washing the head after the face up is done, especially after changing the skin tone with acrylics, because acrylic paint might start to flake. When her skin tone looks decent enough, I spray it with MSC again and start drawing the details with watercolor pencils. Like all of the other demons in the anime, Nakime has a lot of veins that become more pronounced as she uses her demonic powers. Here I took some liberty and used the meme as a reference because I wanted to go for more realistic look than you can see in manga. In the anime and manga, Nakime is usually hiding her eye behind her bangs, but after she's been promoted to the upper Moon 4 rank, we can finally see that she has just one gigantic pink eye with a kanji on the iris that shows her rank. Even though Nakime is just a rank 4 demon, a supportive antagonist, I have a feeling that Kibutsujimu-san, the main antagonist, keeps her closer than other demons. For example, when he sets meetings, she is always there using her Biwa to summon other moons. She never talks and reminds me of Bob from the Jay and Silent Bob movie, because she is so quiet and introverted but takes no shit. And maybe that's why I've chosen her for my doll project, because she feels relatable to me. My favorite part of Demon Slayer is that every time a demon is defeated, they show their background story full of the pain that made them evil and extremely powerful after their transformation. Usually demons don't remember their past anymore, but it always influences their abilities, character, tactics and behavior, just like Freud wrote in his theory that our mental health issues are based on a childhood trauma that we forgot, but our subconscious stays influenced by it, and when the trauma gets triggered, we act in a certain way without realizing why. Nakime has a tragic story as well. In her human past, she was a poor Biwa musician struggling to make ends meet. Her husband was wasting all of the money she was earning on gambling, and one day he had stolen her performing dress and sold it right before she had to perform on the stage, and after Nakime found out what happened, she killed him out of rage with a hammer. After murdering her husband, she decides to perform anyway, wearing her old shabby clothes on the stage. The crowd didn't approve her looks, of course, but the music she played was so charming and beautiful that people didn't care about her looks anymore and fell in love with her talent. Nakime becomes a well-paid musician, but she started killing people before every big performance she had to do. Kibutsuji Muzan was impressed by her ability to track down people and offered her a place at his side as a demon and serve him. So as a human, she was a Biwa musician who was good at tracking people, and with demon blood she gets abilities to control buildings and summon demons by playing her Biwa. And after becoming the Upper Moon 4, she gains an ability to track people's locations. Here I'm going to shut up, do not spoil you the story, because not all of the people are reading manga. The face up is done, just look at her, isn't she pretty? Next up is a body modification. Unfortunately, Monster High dolls cannot kneel in the Seiza style, so I had to modify her knee joints. For this I had to buy a Dremel tool, and I really like it because it makes life much easier. I make the knees out of a piece of wood that I found in my new apartment. I don't know what it was, but it's much stronger than popsicle sticks and not so easy to break. I used the Dremel to carve slots for the joints too, but at first I made them too large and it looked ugly, and then I had to fill them up with epoxy sculpt and carve the new slots instead. I didn't wait for epoxy sculpt to cure completely, I just waited for like 6 hours for it to become stable but still soft enough for me to be able to cut it with a craft knife. This part was extremely challenging for me because I didn't know if it's going to work out well, plus I didn't feel confident with the tool yet, but the end result came out fine. This is the power of not giving up, I guess. For the joint pins I used toothpicks. At first I drill a small pilot hole and then switch to a bigger bit to reduce the chance of cracking. The joints seem to function well now, and the last thing I would like to add is some epoxy sculpt on the knees to make them look a bit more natural. After sanding all of the parts of the doll's body, it is time to paint it. I prefer to use enamel paint for bodies because it bonds better to plastic surfaces, and it's more resistant to friction on joints. The only disadvantage of this paint is that it smells strong and you need to buy a thinner for it, which is more toxic than your eggs. Well, and each layer has to dry at least for 6 hours, which makes the process time consuming. But check this out, I can pose the doll and nothing is chipping off. Now I build the joints together, smooth up the edges of the toothpicks, and then apply one more layer of paint because there is still some green showing through. Next up is the outfit. Nakime is wearing a black kimono, and traditional clothes are usually made of rectangular pieces, because in the past people didn't like to waste fabric and tried to avoid having any leftovers. However, traditional cut wouldn't work with the monster high body. That's why I make a pattern for the kimono based on the pattern I made for the normal dress. I made the pattern pieces as rectangular as possible, but I kept the form of the back seam, because if I make the back completely straight after wearing a belt, the back of the kimono will be too short comparing to the front. And another important part is to keep the form of the shoulder seams, because otherwise the fabric won't lay on the doll's shoulders as smooth as on a human. Always have to keep in mind that we are working with a smaller scale, so the fabric to a doll is much thicker. All the other parts, like the collar and sleeves, will be rectangular. Her outfit consists of 2 layers. The first is a lower kimono called nagajuban. I make it first because it's like underwear and it won't be visible, so I see it as an opportunity to test the pattern I made, adjust the lengths, etc. I also simplified the frontal panels and made them one piece, again in order to avoid having too many layers of fabric in the end. For the kimono, I didn't change the pattern much. All I did is just split the frontal details into two parts and made the kimono itself longer, to make sure that the underwear won't be visible in the bottom. The black layer took me like 3 times more time than the white one, not just because it has one more detail, but because this fabric is harder to work with and I had to do more seams by hand. And because I'm a toxic perfectionist when it comes to clothes. In the anime, Nakime is wearing just white socks and no shoes because she sits on tatami all of the time and never walks outside. I've decided to make a pair of shoes for her anyway, but they will be one piece with the socks. First I make the socks, put them on the doll and protect everything with plastic wrap. Then I can sculpt the soles using epoxy sculpt. After epoxy sculpt cures, I remove the soles from the wrap and sand them. I'm going to make the shoes one piece with the socks, and now I covered the doll's legs with plastic wrap before putting on the socks, this time in order to protect the doll from glue that might come through the fabric. and I don't want the shoes to stick to the doll. I use a golden ribbon for the shoes because I want them to match her obi. After fixing the ribbons to the socks, I glue the soles with super glue and paint them black. Even though I used black epoxy, after sanding it always turns grey. But I prefer to use the black epoxy anyway, just in case the paint gets damaged. Before sewing the obi, I would like to dress the doll to know for sure the size of the belt she will need. This golden fabric is the most annoying fabric I've ever worked with. It's slippery, the edges become frayed, and it's also quite hard, but I think I still managed to get a pretty decent result. And at last comes the most important part, the Biwa. I used wood as the main frame and some epoxy sculpt to add more volume to the back of the Biwa. This part is usually painted with darker varnish, so it won't look out of place. And all of the small details I make out of popsicle sticks. In this project, the Biwa was my favorite part, not just because it came out well, but also because it was fun and challenging, like hard enough to keep me interested, but not too hard so I could enjoy the process.
That's what she said.
Giggity. I paint the backside of the Biwa with enamel paint. And for the wooden parts I use a mixture of semi-gloss varnish and acrylic paint. It will save the texture of wood, but give it a darker shade. Let's have a look at the end result. Tell me in the comments which part was your favorite. And if you like this video, please subscribe, support this channel with your likes, and see you in the next video. Bye!